Philip Seymour Hoffman is here. He is one of our most talented and versatile actors. His latest effort is the lead character in Capote. Here is the trailer for the film.
The world will see you as a monster. I don't want that. I've decided on a title for my book. In Cold Blood. Isn't that good?
I am pleased to welcome Philip Seymour Hoffman back to this table. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
This is a great movie and a great performance, so let's just sort of move beyond that.
Yeah, let's move
Which is
that.
uncomfortable for you.
Way beyond that.
Here it is, this guy that a lot of people in New York know, a lot of people you know, who wrote this extraordinary book and sort of created an art form almost.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of a kind of what it was. Almost a...
He took part in it.
Yeah, he took part in it. That's right. Took part in it. Tell me how you decided to... You presented with this challenge. How you go about it. What's the steps of getting inside of somebody? Does it start with a voice? Does it... And what is it you have to capture to find the guy you know is Truman Capote?
Well, I think it's always different, but I think with Truman Capote, since he's such an icon, and like you said, there's a lot of people still alive who are very, who know him or seen him or hung out with him, and then there's a lot of people who just witnessed him on TV all through the 70s and early 80s. And I think you have to kind of start with saying, I don't know. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do this at all. Really be as naive as possible, and as ignorant as possible. Because then you can keep yourself as wide open as possible for anything that could be of help, could be of use, and so I just read whatever I could, and I listened and watched whatever I could.
He had a lot of television he'd done.
Well, he's done a lot of television, but I tried to stay away from the talk shows. I watched them a little bit, but because the film takes place before that period of time, and I really wanted to capture him at kind of the height of his powers. This is the period really when he's at his best, and there's this great documentary that the Maysles brothers made called With Love from Truman around 67, 66 in black and white.
Kind of a cinema verite capturing.
Beautiful, beautiful film, and it helped me a lot because it was from that period, and it was capturing him in his private moments and his private settings in a lot of different areas. And you got to see him in a lot of different ways, and that was very helpful. But just to keep yourself open because you don't know where something's going to come from that's going to inspire you to the next place, The
voice is easy. Or not?
No, the voice, sometimes those things can be, but I'm not very good at accents and mimicking people. I've never been good at that. And so I always have to work a lot when I have to do something like that. But this, because it's not just a feminine voice or a high pitch, it's not just something as simple as that. There's something to it because you start working on it and you realize, what the hell is he doing? You can't figure it out. There's something with his tongue. There's something with his jaw.
How does he make those
sounds? It's like his whole face is formed in a way to make the sound come out, and it was just maddening for like a couple months before I started like clicking in a little bit. But even then, it was difficult.
Is that the first thing though?
You slip back and forth. You kind of start making strides with one thing, and then you then you get an idea about another thing. It might be a physical thing, and you come over there and start making strides with that. But you're always got to be looking at the story. You always have to be looking at the truth and the through line of the story because they can't live without each other. Yeah. You think you can compartmentalize all these things, but ultimately they have to fuse together and become a living thing inside of you. And so that's what's maddening is that you want to,
And one of the things that was essential about him, he was a great writer.
It's a great writer.
And you can't show that, can you?
Well, you can't, but you can show his intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing because a lot of people remember him as being somewhat of this just kind of colorful raconteur who became almost
man around town in New York City
who became almost embarrassing at times to a lot of people. He showed that famous TV show that he showed up on. And he was drunk out of his mind. And there's a lot of times that he projected himself into the society.
But that was that later part. Was that the later?
But that's how a lot of people remember him. You know what I mean? So it was very important for me to the people who don't know him to see how intelligent and witty and insightful and quick he was, because that's really who he was.
So you got to show his intelligence right off.
Absolutely.
There is also about him this interesting thing, and you see this in the film, that he's different to different people. His relationship to his friends is one thing, raconteur, other thing is like certain confidence. When he's with people that he needs something from, he's manipulative, lying.
he's whatever he needs to be. I mean, I think if you're somebody, and I think we can all relate to this, I think if you're somebody who is entering into an event, a situation, and you desire the love of the people in that event, whoever it is, be it one person, a bunch of people, and you desire it so badly, and you don't know maybe why you desire it so badly, but you do, you find yourself getting desperate, and you find yourself doing things that you wouldn't normally do. You find yourself morphing yourself into whatever you need to be in order to win them over. And I think that's a human quality when people are in that kind of vulnerable, insecure place. I think Capote lived in that place. That's my opinion. I think it varied from levels to levels, but I do think he entered into most events from that place of vulnerability and insecurity. And so he did whatever he could to gain the attention, the affection, the admiration of whoever he needed it from. And that, became a skill for him, I think.
Did you like him?
Yeah. And a lot of people I don't. A lot of people don't. It's funny. The people, somebody said to me, you made me feel for that little SHI, and I did, because the more I learned about him, it's just he's flawed beyond belief, and he can be judged and criticized to the end of the earth. But ultimately, when somebody's so flawed and you see all of them and they're so open like that, I had empathy for him. I did.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, that this is a moment in his life, which is a defining moment.
Yeah.
And you see that scene we just saw in the trailer. He's reading the New York Times.
Yeah.
And at least he knows something is worth going to find out about.
Well, he had incredible intuition, I think. Yeah. And he had incredible...
But this is one more murder. I mean, he just...
this is me being kind of mystical about it a little bit, but I think it was fateful. I think this event in his life was fateful. I think he was searching for it. I think he wanted to leave something behind that would be of such great magnitude, a piece of work like Proust's, Remembrance of Things Past. Right. He wanted that so badly. I think he was honest at that time in his life. He was on a search for what that would be, and I think he happened upon this not by accident, but on purpose.
Yeah.
Because,
I would believe that too. Knowing a little bit about him, I would believe that too. But it is the idea. Let's assume that he's looking for a main chance. Yeah. That he knows he needs something to give him a place in the annals of American literature. Yeah. He needs it.
Yeah.
Why would he choose this?
Well, I don't think he knew. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't think he knew it was this at that time. I think he read the article.
It's just worth going on a lark to find out.
I think he thought that this was going to be a great article that he was going to write for the New Yorker. I thought that this town dealing with these murders, this is going to be this fantastic article I'm going to write. But I think that's part of it. I don't think he knew what he was getting himself into, but I think deep down underneath, he was always rolling the dice on maybe this is the one, even though he might not be conscious. That's just how I saw it. So like when he was in Kansas and Perry Smith and Dick Hickok show up, you see him, this fateful tragedy start to roll out. It plays out. It's unstoppable,
It's almost as it reaches out to get him.
It reaches out. Yes,
exactly.
He thinks he's going. He thinks he's like, I'm going to grab, but actually it's grabbing him. Yeah. It reached, I think in Bennett, the director, Bennett Miller, feels that Kansas basically reached across the country and grabbed Truman Capote from New York and pulled him that way.
And he was uniquely able to do this story because he knew how to get inside these two murderers.
Yeah, I don't think he had any clue how to do it at first, but he sure figured it out. Yeah.
When you also... Well, let me talk about how you mentioned Miller, who's this director. Yeah. You two knew each other since you were 16?
16 years old. And Danny Futterman, the screenwriter.
We all met a former actor and now screenwriter.
Yeah, well, he's an actor still. Yeah, it's his first screenplay, and it's Bennett's first feature, but Bennett has a lot of experience shooting film and commercials, and he shot this wonderful documentary, The Cruise, in 1999. But we met in the summer program when we were 16, which is, and I went to college with Bennett, and this is not anything I think any of us ever thought would ever happen. It's pretty...
Define him as a director, because you said something, the New York Times piece about the three of you, and it was a scene setter in which you guys are making the pitch. And the guy who's going to give you the money, or whoever it is, ends up giving you, cost $7 million to make, according to the New York Times. Yeah,
ultimately it did. It was smaller than that at the time, but we pushed it.
But in a sense, tell me about Miller. I mean, this guy who made this really...
Well, there's people in your life. You know people from when you were a teenager, right? There's people and there's people you always have a feeling about, And Bennett is one of those guys. He's been one of those guys since I knew him. He's always been probably the most intelligent man in the room. since I've known him. He's always been one of the wittiest men in the room when I've known him, since I've known him. And I just knew that he hadn't shot a feature film yet. We're both 38 years old because the right one hadn't come yet. Not because he couldn't.
He got offers after The Cruise.
Yes, absolutely. And I really think that when he came to my house with Danny Futterman and said, this is a script that Danny wrote and I think I want to direct it, I was like, oh, really? You know, because you're 38, now you want to direct? And that made me very excited. That turned me on because I knew that when he made a film, I knew when he made his first feature, it would be a very exciting film. And I think
because he's methodical, he's meticulous, he's passionate, he's driven to...
He's driven, and he's intelligent. And I knew that he was going to like push me and challenge me and do whatever it needed to take with me to get the job done. And that's what I need, and that's what I like.
In the life of Truman Capote, Harper Lee, childhood friend, wrote To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Plays what in this movie? What is she there for?
Well, he says assistant and personal bodyguard. And that's how he describes her, which tells you a little bit about Capote right from the get-go and their relationship. They're kind of... joking, stabbing, kind of.
But
she's
also a truth teller.
She's much more than that. That's just the joke at the beginning. Which I think what she is she's there also as a buffer, because I think he's nervous and scared of how people are going to deal with him when he gets down there, being 1959 Midwest Kansas and how Truman was. And she had that way about her, and I think she did help him a lot. And she was also very simply a fact checker for him. They'd be at the interviews together with whoever, and they'd go back, because they wouldn't record or write anything down, and they'd go back to the hotel room, and they'd remind each other of exactly what people said, and they'd write it down. And that was all. But I do think, as a friend, I think Truman had a few people around him, Jack Dunphy being one,
his
lover, who I think were there, and they were his mirrors. Yeah. And so he was able to reflect off the mirror, and the mirror might reflect back, I don't know who the hell you think you are, why are you doing that, those kinds of things. So he could hear the truth, but he'd still go off and do what he wanted to do anyway. But as long as he had that, I think it brought a lot of comfort to him.
And she had been around, and she'd heard enough of his story, so she could finish the story.
Absolutely.
He'd start the sentence, and she'd heard it before. She'd know where it was going.
Yeah, and that he don't. My choice was that I don't think he liked that so much. But at the end of the day, I think he was smart enough at that time to realize that he needed those people around him. And I think as he got older and as things started to deteriorate, I think he lost touch with that.
Let's see some scenes from this film. This is where Harper Lee, played by Catherine Keener, asked Capote about his relationship with Perry Smith, which is at the center of this film, because he is one of the two accused killers later executed.
Did you fall in love with him?
I don't know how to answer that.
Truman.
It's as if Perry and I grew up in the same house. And one day, he stood up and went out the back door. Well, I went out the front.
While we're watching this, you might be stronger than he is, and you're saying no.
No, that was something that, I mean, that's, again, these are the choices I came up with through whatever I could find, is that the thing I struggle with a lot playing this part is his boldness, his cocksuredness, his way of walking into a room. I mean, you'd see it, you just see his head tilted up, and that energy he had. I mean, you can.
And he was at the center of the room.
If you watch like the talk show, like the Carson show or something like that, he literally jaunts on stage. He almost bounces like a little bunny or something. And he's like jaunting on stage with this cocksure. He's just kind of come on. But what I figured is underneath that was an incredible desire to be loved, and I just saw that very clearly. And it really infused him with this confidence and cocksureness and boldness and courage.
And the ability, though, to look them in the eye.
Look them in the eye.
And lie to
them.
And tell them, I need this information. And they say, do you have a title for the book? No. No.
Yeah, absolutely.
And convincingly say.
Convincingly say, I can lie to him because I think he justified it in the moment. I don't think he felt like he was lying in those moments. I think he felt like he had every right to do those things. I really do. I think the day he died, I think he would defend that. You know, but the thing is
he had a right to get them to tell the story.
Absolutely, that this is about the art. This is about the book. When he says to Perry, he's like, I'm a writer. That's what I do. He says it to Perry at one point. It's like, I'm not here, you know, to entertain you. You know, I'm here to write this book. And
that's a good moment.
And that's in the movie too. And you get it very clear that he has justified all his actions. But I don't think, that's why I said it's a classic tragedy. I don't think he understands where this story is ultimately rolling toward. And I think he's fighting it, and he's fighting it off, and he's fighting it off, and it's inevitable that he's going to actually have to make a decision between his ambition in the book and watching these two people he got very close to die.
It is rolling towards a moment in which, to end his book, they have to be executed.
That's right.
That's where it's rolling. And where does he want them to be executed? Because he wants to end the story and finish the book and move on.
Yeah. So he's saying, I would like it if you would die, but when you die, the grief I will feel will be crushing. Yeah. Meaning he's willing someone's death who ultimately, when they die, will cause so much grief that it will crush them. Those two things can't coexist together without causing severe damage. And I think that ultimately that's the damage, that's the tragedy that unfolds in this film in an incredibly taut, concise way, the way Bennett put it together. And that's, to me, what's compelling about it. I didn't accept this film to play Truman Capote. I accepted this film to take part in telling that story. Because that story to me is about, I'm getting very corny here, but it's about life. It's about those decisions in every moment where you're like, should I go there or should I go there? No, I want both. And you realize that these things that are so different, that are so opposite, that are battling with each other, coexist together inside of you. And how difficult that is, and that this is an incredibly extreme example of that, I think, very human dilemma that ambition and greed and all these things will bring up.
Which makes it, as you say, a story beyond Capote. It's a story
beyond Capote,
about human life and choices and
ambition, celebrity, journalism. The writer and the subject.
Yeah.
God, it really is. It opens
did you
up a huge
see
can of
all
worms.
of that when you get a call from Bennett saying, "I got this property we ought to talk about," or whatever he said?
I mean, I remember one of my first conversations was, this story has everything to do with the exploitation of life that we're experiencing right now. Yeah. It's like 24/7.
You guys walked in with your eyes open, knowing what you had.
Yeah, well, I think so, or we wouldn't have walked in the room. We had a lot of doubt if we'd be able to pull it off. A lot of doubt. We were all I think, hoping that maybe it wouldn't even happen.
You've had a variety of experiences. Is this as good as it gets in terms of making a movie?
It's as good as it gets pertaining to the relationship I had with my director and my writer, and their relationship they had to their actor, because we knew each other for so long. That can sometimes go sour, as we all know. Yeah. And this thing, it only made us closer. We did battle when we had to do battle. We argued when we had to argue. We hugged when we had to hug. We made up when we had to make up. And other than that, it was just truth from beginning to the end of the day. You don't need to coddle me. You don't need to, you know what I mean? It's just, I want the truth. If you got to yell at me, yell. I was like, let's do whatever it takes. And that was an incredible experience and a very, very satisfying one.
Yeah. Take a look at this. This is where we want to introduce you to the characters where Capote tells Perry Smith why he keeps talking to him. Here it is.
There is one singular reason I keep coming here.
Truman.
November 14th, 1959. 3 years ago. 3 years. I found your sister in Tacoma. Maybe she'll talk to me about something useful.
When you see that, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that I made everyone go to bed the night before so I could shoot it in the morning. I'm not kidding.
Because you'd be better in the morning?
Well, because we had shot the Cliffside, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 late, and I said, "Is there any way I can get you all to go to bed and do this when we get back in the morning?"
I'm watching you. I'm saying it's something he's looking at this.
But that's the stuff I think about. It's what you think about when you watch it. But I think about it. Well, that pertains to what we were talking about before. You see his incredible strength. This guy he's talking to shotgun a family of 4 in the face. And he is he has won him over in such a way that he can actually deal with him like this, and he humiliates him in that scene in a very ugly way,
and playing games with his brain.
Yeah, and then after that, saying, "I'm going to go visit your sister."
And she'll tell me.
She'll tell me. And that's like awfully, I know.
So tell me things you don't have the balls to tell me.
Absolutely, about you.
Yeah. There was also this side of Truman Capote, He once did a television interview in which he said he thought all actors were stupid.
We're stupid. Yeah, it's excellent. It's excellent.
And he didn't just name any actor.
Yeah, Brando.
Olivier and Brando.
And Gielgud. No, he had the list. It's crazy. I can't remember. There was a few people that were off the list, but like 2. But he said Brando was as dumb as a post.
Yeah.
I think I kept watching because I couldn't. It was the balls that man had to sit there and say it with just a straight face, and he meant it. And then he had this argument about why that was, and he's wrong. I remember
what was his argument?
You're wrong. Well, just about the fact that actors rely on intuition, so therefore they don't have anything between them and the real world, and that thing that people have is what allows the intelligence to take place, or something like this.
So they just want to mainline their emotions, and so
it's just emotions, and so they don't think about anything. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous. Acting's all about thinking. But of course, I'm the actor, and it was incredible because then I could see in that moment about how crazy he would make people. But that's ultimately how he got a lot of attention.
What did he think about Perry in the end? Beyond he needed him to finish his book and to tell him the story. He needed to know what happened that night in that house when 4 people were murdered. And he needed him to be executed.
And then he needed him to go away. Well, I think you learn early on in the film, and if you do any research on him, that one of the things that connected the 2 of them, that added to this fateful tragedy, I think, was the fact that were both orphaned children, basically. They were abandoned and at their youth in very aggressive ways, almost violent, and so I think they both had issues with being abandoned in a big way, which a lot of people identify with, but I think these 2 were special cases. And so wanting him to tell about that night and then wanting him ultimately to die linked up with don't go, if you see what I mean. Yeah. Underneath it all, he's functioning on there's something that's making his heart pump, and for me with Capote, it was about that abandonment thing. And so I think ultimately in losing Perry, there was a crushing grief that followed that. And that's what I was talking about earlier. So I do think that ultimately he needed him to go. He had his reasons for it. He justified it. But I think what he hid from a lot of people, what he kept buried, was his crushing grief that he felt with his loss.
But after this, he never wrote another book.
Yeah, I mean, how could you?
And he became an alcoholic. If he wasn't already on
he was on his road. Yeah, he was on his way. I think he became a lot of things. Yeah, but I think once you had Zadie Smith on here the other. I was watching that, and she said something about a certain good-natured quality needed in order to write. About the people. She said something like that. Yeah. I think Capote lost that. I think it got too dark in there. And once it gets too dark, it's hard. It's hard to have a certain,
Too dark, meaning he didn't like himself even?
He did, I think the way he viewed himself, I think he was judging himself on a level no one ever could, but I don't think he'd ever admit to that, and I don't think he was willing to clean that up in any way of coming clean or anything like that. I think one thing piled on top of the other. He lashed out with those chapters in Answered Prayers and what he said about people he knew.
Who all turned against him and made his life miserable.
How he talked on these talk shows, what I mean? Think all the people he pissed off doing those things. And at the parties and his drunkenness and the pill taking and everything that happened, I think he really lost a lot of his friends, and I think society turned its back on him, and I think that was the worst thing that could happen to Truman Capote, was to be rejected,
Because he'd been rejected as a child.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear the story he tells, and it's a true story in the film about what his mother used to do to him, and you can see that it made a huge impact on him.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
A great movie.
Thank you very much.
It really is, an extraordinary film. Capote opens in theaters on Friday, September 30th. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.